My, what a wicked web we weave. Folks, the dissension within the African National Congress and former members of the African National Congress is reaching boiling point. Holed up at a National Executive Committee meeting held a few weeks ago at the Birchwood Hotel in Gauteng to discuss the poor electoral showing of the African National Congress in both Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provinces in last year's national elections, former South African President Thabo Mbeki stunned the party's National Executive Committee members when he all but called Jacob Zuma an apartheid regime spy.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Shots fired, shots fired. Wow. Now, this is the first time people made the allegation that Zuma was a spy for the National Party and the apartheid regime, but it comes from a former president and was done at the highest body of the ruling African National Congress. NEC members apparently sat in stunned silence at the claim. And Mbeki questioned the existence of a trial that resulted in Zuma being convicted and shipped off to Robben Island, as if it was all fiction. Mbeki reported claimed that no one could attest to a trial that Zuma attended and produced records of that trial, flat out implying that Zuma was a plant on Robben Island, calling into question whether he was ever even a legitimate struggle veteran. Wow, shots fired here. Once fast friends, the former presidents, Thabo Mbeki, the technocrat, and Jacob Zuma, the populist, are anything but friends these days. Back when they were in exile, first in Swaziland and then in Mozambique, President Zuma regarded former state president Thabo Mbeki as his best friend. But the rift between the two is now decades old. It began back in 2005 when Mbeki was compelled to fire Zuma from his post as deputy president over pervasive allegations of fraud, corruption, and money laundering related to the arms deal in the late 1990s. But Zuma got his revenge in what I call the Polokwane massacre, where a sitting president of South Africa was essentially fired as head of the African National Congress by his previously ousted deputy president at that ANC conference in Polokwane in December of 2007. And Mbeki wound up resigning before his term was over in September 2008 as president of South Africa. At that Polokwane conference, Zuma managed to marshal 60% of the delegate votes, an embarrassing and humiliating loss for the sitting president, Thabo Mbeki. Mbeki has, understandably, held a grudge ever since, and the rift has never been repaired. Which brings us back to Mbeki's allegation at the NEC a few weeks ago. A member of the NEC reportedly stated, in the last NEC, President Mbeki accused Zuma, saying his imprisonment was not recorded for the 10 years he served in Robben Island. He was saying nobody knows about the trial Zuma allegedly attended, and records thereof do not exist. In response to this weekend revelation of the incident at the NEC, MK spokesman Lamu Ndela said he cannot comment on things that he will end up being personal about. Ooh. Ndela said Mbeki was an attention seeker who had never even went to Robben Island, yet he is called a freedom fighter. Thabo Mbeki, of course, famously lived abroad for much of his time and went to school in Oxford in exile. If someone like the late comrade Chris Hani wrote a letter that Mbeki must not lead, then it says a lot about him. He's just an opportunist. Well, I don't know if that's true, Ndela, but I can certainly understand why you're responding this way. Now, another leader sympathetic to Thabo Mbeki in the NEC said the characterization of Zuma could be spot on. Hence, no NEC members stood up to dispute Mbeki's version. Nobody at the NEC stood up for Jacob Zuma when he was accused of being a spy for the National Party, the apartheid regime. That speaks volumes in and of itself. Either the dissension in the NEC, the absolute gobsmacked reaction of the members, or the extreme anger with Jacob Zuma's formation of the MK party and its upstart 14+% of the electorate last year. His name, Gedleyi Shlilkisa, is a word constructed by his father. When the Zulu phrase is translated in English, it reads, "I cannot keep quiet when someone pretends to love me with a deceitful smile." Well, I think that speaks volumes about Jacob Zuma and Thabo Mbeki. What do you think, folks? Tempest in a teapot? Something to it? Does it really even matter? We're talking about events that are decades old. Unless someone wants to get even for a grudge, what's the point of this story anyway? Well, for me, it's humorous to watch the ANC implode and those who pilfered the wealth of South Africans for their own personal pleasure, profit, self-aggrandizement, self-enrichment, and craving political power being embarrassed in this fashion. Cheers, South Africa. All the best.